Welcome back to another episode of SmoothBrainEDH, where you make the smoothest plays with the biggest brains. We've got some high-power EDH action for you all today, so let's see what our players brought to the table. Our first player today is Cameron on Kura, the Boundless Sky. This is a mono-green Lands Matters deck, hoping to ramp like crazy and use Kura as a way to tutor powerful lands to hand. Up next is Jason on Sauron, the Dark Lord. This Grixis deck plans to power that super fast Sauron, then let the army it creates do all the heavy lifting and beating down opponents. Third is Alex on Frodo, Adventurous Hobbit, and Sam, Loyal Attendant. This Abzan deck is focused around life gain, using that extra life to fuel powerful game-ending plays. Last up is Matt on Jodah, the Unifier. This 5-color deck is legendary typo, hoping to cast a bunch of free legendary spells thanks to Jodah and dominate the board. We're about to hop right into the game, but before that, go and give us a like, subscribe, and ring the notification bell so you don't miss any of our new content. We have links to our social media, public Discord server, Decklists, and our Patreon in the description. We're partnered with Dragon Shield. Check out our affiliate link in the description if you're looking to pick up any sleeves, deck boxes, or playmats. Now, on to the gameplay.
Actually, before we start, I have an announcement about the giveaway we just ran. Winners have been selected, and at the time of this video going live, we are emailing all of the winners. Please answer within 24 hours or we're going to have to pick someone else. And if you did win, don't forget to include a social media tag or maybe your YouTube channel so we can actually announce who won. It looks like Jason wins the die roll, and he starts off with a volcanic island into a mana vault. The turn is then passed to Alex, and he plays a brushland into Delighted Halfling. The turn is then passed, and Matt says, Exotic Orchard go. And Cameron plays a Snow Forest and passes. Jason will play Bloodstained Mire and immediately fetch with it, and he finds an Underground Sea. He'll then exile Simian Spirit Guide for a red, and then completely tap out to get a turn 2 Sauron the Dark Lord. The turn is then passed to Alex, and he starts off with a forest, and then he'll cast a Soul Ring. Sauron amasses. Then Alex will cast an uncounterable Frodo, Sauron trigger. The turn is then passed to Matt, he starts off with a forest, and he'll just pass. And Cameron starts off with a War Room, and then we'll cast Sakura Tribe Elder, Sauron trigger, and then he passes the turn to Jason, who starts off with an Exotic Orchard, and then he'll move to combat, and he swings Sauron at Alex, which is valid because he's playing Frodo, and then he'll swing 3 at Matt, and they both just take it. And after his army connects, Jason is tempted, and his army becomes his ring bearer. When he's tempted, he'll discard his hand and draw 4 cards, and in those cards he discards are Wonder and Anger. Oh lord. Post-combat, Jason will cast Talisman of Indulgence, then he'll tap for 2 black and cast Dothy Voidwalker. And Cameron responds by sacking Sack Daddy to get a basic forest to the battlefield. Then it resolves, and then the turn is passed to Alex, and he starts off with Woodland Cemetery. Then he'll tap for 3 and cast an uncounterable Sam, Sauron trigger. And then after this, he casts Peregrine Took, yet another Sauron trigger. Alex then moves to combat, and Sam makes a food, and Pippin makes a second one. Then he decides to poke Jason for 1 with Frodo. The turn is then passed to Matt, and he'll play City of Brass, and then cast Rhystic Study, taking 1 to a city. Army trigger. The turn is then passed to Cameron, and he'll cast Druid class, Army trigger and Rhystic trigger. He doesn't pay the 1, then he plays Urza's Mine and casts 3 visits. More triggers, and he doesn't pay the 1 again. And you know what? I'm getting tired of announcing all these triggers. So, from now on, I'm just going to let you know when Jason misses an army trigger, and when Matt's Rhystic Study is paid for. Anyways, Cameron finds a force to the battlefield, and then he passes to Jason. Oh yeah, and he gained 2 life from those lands entering. Now on Jason's turn, he'll cast Demonic Tutor. Now, he doesn't have to reveal what he tutored for, but after seeing what he casts next, it's pretty obvious that that's what he tutored for. So then he'll play an Otawara as land for turn, and then he casts a Mana Crypt, and he does pay the 1. And just like the Dark Lord himself, Jason decides it's time to bully some hobbits. So he taps for 4 and casts Fire Covenant, paying the 1, and he pays 10 life to kill everything on Alex's side of the board except for Delighted Halfling. Not only rude, but also just absolutely diabolical. Jason will then move to combat, and he hits Alex with his commander again, and then Matt with his army again, and Cameron with Dothy Voidwalker. And when Jason's army deals damage again, his ring gets upgraded to level 2, and the ring is moved over to Dothy Voidwalker, and since Jason is empty-handed, he'll just draw 4 cards off Sauron. The turn is then passed to Alex, and he starts off by casting Meriadoc Brandybuck. He'll then tap for 3, and he gets his vengeance by Beast Withinning Sauron, and the ward cost is paid by sacrificing Meriadoc. It resolves, and Jason gets a 3/3, and then the turn is passed to Matt. He starts off by playing and fetching with a Wooded Foothills, finding an untapped Steam Vents to the battlefield, then he'll tap for 3 and cast Heresy Thalia, and he takes another damage from a city. It resolves, and Cameron jokingly throws a hissy fit, saying that this 1 card just ruined his entire next turn. Matt doesn't care though, so he'll move to his cleanup, and he has to be careful what he discards because of Jason's Dothy Voidwalker.
That one's fine to give you. Okay, move to end step. Commander Sphere.
Okay.
Other Thalia.
Yep.
And then Chulane.
The turn is then passed to Cameron, and he starts off with Kodama's Reach. He'll find 2 forests, one goes to the battlefield tapped, and one will go to his hand, and he plays that one as land for turn. Then he'll tap for 3 and upgrade his Druid class, so he's able to play an additional land this turn, so he'll play a tapped Yavimaya. And then he passes the turn to Jason. He loses Crypt Trigger, and immediately casts Soul Ring. And now he has enough mana to recast Sauron the Dark Lord. Oh boy, here we go again. He'll then play a Luxury Suite as land for turn. Then Jason moves to combat, and he swings his 3/3 at Matt, and his 10/10 army at Cameron. And they both just take the damage. Jason is tempted again, and his 3/3 beast gets the ring, and he'll also discard his hand and draw 4 cards. And then the turn is passed to Alex, and he'll start off by recasting Sam Loyal Attendant. Alex will then move through his combat, and Sam generates him another food token, and then the turn is passed to Matt. And Matt starts his turn off by playing an Otawara as land for turn, and then he'll tap for 4 and cast Halana and Elena, which is notably a reach blocker. After this, Matt moves to combat, and Halana and Elena trigger, and Thalia gets the counters. Matt will then move to his end step, then clean up, and discard a Temur Sabertooth. Then the turn is Cameron's. He'll start off by playing Vesuva as land for turn, and he asks if there's any cool lands around the table. There's really not, so he copies his own War Room. He'll then tap for 6 and cast Multani. Then he taps for 2 and casts his Evolutionary Leap. And then the turn is passed to Jason. And on his upkeep, he thinks for a little bit and decides, you know what, I think I will pay 4 to Mana Vault because I'm getting a little low, and 1 damage every turn might add up. Then he'll roll for Mana Crypt, lose, and get bolted in the face. Jason will then tap for 6 mana and cast Archfiend of Ifnir. And I know some of you are already going to the comments and are about to say, wait, it's a 5-drop. He was paying for Rhystic Study. Jason will then move to combat, and he goes for the commander damage kill at Alex. Then he'll swing his 3/3 Ring Bearer at Matt, and the 14 power army at Cameron. There's a Ring Bearer trigger, and Jason goes to draw and discard, but Matt decides to respond, and he'll Swords to Plowshares Archfiend of Ifnir. Matt forgets to take his City of Brass damage, and unfortunately, Alex hits peak commander damage and is out of the game. Matt will take 3, and Cameron now has to take 15 since the spell was cast. Jason then remembers to resolve his draw and discard, and then an army connected, so he'll then discard the rest of his hand and draw 4. And in those 4, he finds a basic island, which he will play as land for turn, and then use it and his Mana Vault to cast his own Rhystic Study. The turn is then passed to Matt. He starts off by playing a Scalding Tarn as land for turn, then he'll tap for 5 and cast his commander, Jodah the Unifier. There's a Rhystic Study trigger, and Matt will respond to it by cracking a Scalding Tarn. He'll find a basic mountain with its search, and he'll use it to pay for Rhystic Study. Matt will then move to combat, and Halana and Elena will trigger. He'll target Jodah with it, and Jason responds by sacrificing his Dauthi Voidwalker. Jason foresees his impending doom if Jodah stays around, so he'll cast Matt's Swords to Plowshares for free, and he'll exile Jodah, and Matt gains 8. Still in combat, Matt moves to declare attackers, and he points 7 damage at Jason, and he just has to take it. After this, Matt just passes the turn, and on cleanup, he discards Lavinia. Now on Cameron's turn, he moves straight to combat. He turns Multani sideways at Jason and bonks him for 9. Post-combat, Cameron will tap for 5 and cast his commander, Kura the Boundless Sky. Then he'll pay 1 to sacrifice it to Evolutionary Leap. This puts a Kura Death trigger on the top of the stack, and Cameron decides to tutor for 3 lands. The very first one he immediately gets is Glacial Chasm, and then the other 2 he grabs are the other 2 pieces of Tron. After this, he resolves Evolutionary Leap's ability, and he gets Rampaging Baloths. Then after this, he has 2 land drops, and he'll play Urza's Tower and Glacial Chasm. And when the chasm hits the field, he sacrifices a forest. The turn is passed to Jason, and on upkeep, he decides to pay 4 to untap Mana Vault. And he'll win his Mana Crypt trigger this time. Jason then goes really deep into the think tank, and he tries to think if there's any way he can get out from under a glacial chasm. Then he says, only one way to find out, and that's by drawing cards. So he'll tap for 7 and cast a Seagate Restoration. He'll draw 4 cards, and then have no max hand size. After getting those cards, he plays a swamp, and unfortunately he doesn't get anything he actually wants. So his last chance is to hit somebody with an army. And Sauron can draw him 4 more cards. So he moves to combat, and swings at Matt for 24 flying in the air. Unfortunately, this does kill Matt, but Jason's able to discard his hand because the ring tempts him, and he draws 4 more. He gets a good look at those 4 new cards, and then he passes the turn to Cameron. Glacial Chasm is sacked on upkeep, and he plays Urza's Power Plant. He'll then tap for 10 mana and cast Ulamog the Ceaseless Hunger. There's a cast trigger, and he gets to exile 2 permanents. The targets are the Beast token and the Army token, and the ability resolves. Cameron then moves to combat, and even though he smells something fishy, he swings a 12 power Multani at Jason. Jason declares no blockers, and then takes the damage. Yeah, he was just bluffing, which means Cameron wins. Way to go, Cameron and Kura and all those amazing lands. Well, there you have it. What an awesome game. Jason really ran away with it early, but Cameron was able to come back with that glacial chasm and secure the victory. Now, I'm sure some of you in the comments are going to complain that power levels were imbalanced. Trust me, these are supposed to be all the same power level. Jason just found all of his gas. But anyways, thank you all so much for watching today. I hope you have a smooth day. See you in Vegas.